work ethic was a foundation of success for migrants, especially from an Italian family. So my father's statement was first in, last out. And yes, people will argue that, that's not a working smarter mentality. But I could never question my work ethic, but my mindset. So the decision I made that if I went for another job, what's stopping me from getting to this same point? And if I don't try to work through it, I'm going to have the same problem at some point.
This episode is brought to you in part by TSE Certified Sales Training Program. The program is to challenge sales reps, to teach them the fundamentals, and to help them become consistent at closing deals. To find out more about the program, go to thesalesevangelist.com/course. This episode is also brought to you in part by audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial. Simply go to audibletrial.com/TSE. Hey, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of the Sales Evangelist podcast. I'm your host, Donald Kelly, the Sales Evangelist, and I'm so excited for another great episode. I'm so excited to be here with you today because this episode is actually historic. It's pretty much our last Sales from the Street episode ever because we're changing the format. We're going to a format where we're going to do a little bit more storytelling. They still will be shorter episodes, but the traditional interview for our Wednesday episodes will be a little different, and we're not going to call them traditionally as we did before, Sales from the Street. So they'll have their different series. Like, for instance, starting up next week, you'll hear a series that we have called the Accidental Seller Series. The individuals I've connected with for that series, it's really just fascinating to hear how all of them had this grim outlook on sales and how salespeople were in their mind, or salespeople are, but then how they change and how they fell into sales. And it's just really cool. So we're going to pull their stories and make it like a little journalism, a little bit narrative, a little storytelling, and make it fun and overall just entertaining and educational for you. Super excited for that. But today, Luigi, this guy, he started listening to our show way back, and then we connected for his podcast, Sales IQ. I recommend it. There's a link in the show notes as well. And just who he is altogether, I'm a big fan. Called Sales IQ. They focus on driving value and helping sales professionals and sales leaders and just teaching the sales game. So I want you to connect with him. I want you to learn from him and some of the cool things that they're doing. I want you to hear the biggest challenge that he faced as a sales rep, how he overcame that challenge, and the results he's seeing today. Welcome to the show, Luigi.
Oh, man. Thank you for having me, Donald.
Bro, I am so stoked to have you. And this is full circle because I talked about this a little bit in the introduction there, how that you started listening to our show a while back. Then, it was just like you started your own show and then you brought me on your show. And then we had an opportunity to bring you on our show now. So it's kind of like this whole symbiotic relationship of podcast growth and friendship.
It's such an awesome, I feel quite humbled because many of the books that are sitting behind me in my office of, some of the greatest minds in our industry have been on your show. And all of a sudden now you're interviewing me. So it's like, I stumbled upon you one day on my app and I think I binge listened to countless episodes. I'm like, this stuff is gold.
Dude, man, that's so awesome, man. Thank you. My wife get annoyed with me when I play my episodes over and over again. So I'm glad somebody likes them.
No, they're good, man. Even the intro, the way you do the little story at the front and the music, I'm like, this is fun. My kids, of all people, have listened to your podcast for a few years because we listened to them in the car and they are sick of podcasts.
Dude, well, awesome. They're learning the ropes of selling. So the future's bright. Right. We have some new sellers coming along.
That's right, man. John Barrow's new book, I want to be in sales. So I've just ordered some books. I've just ordered some from him. So I'm absolutely pumped too. I'm waiting for them to come in the mail. I told my daughter, I said, you need to give some of these out to school. She's like, Dad, I'm not doing that. I said,
Well, as you know, you talked about it at the beginning. We just had our son, so John's going to help me indoctrinate him on the world of selling. So I'm going to buy it for him. It's going to be like his bedtime story for the next 2 years. And then by the time he starts talking, he's going to have all these terms, sales terms down and practices. So it's going to be fun on a preschool playground.
Yeah. He'll be closing.
Love it, man. Well, dude, I'm excited to talk to you on this episode because this is what we call Sales from the Street, where we get a chance to not necessarily focus on what, someone who's written a book or an author, an expert, or just like one of the theories. We want to focus on the real situations, like come from the ground up, like someone being out in the trenches. And you've been there. You've been selling for a number of years now, and your experience and your career is, it's extensive, and it shows that and shows your success. But it hasn't always been like that. We all face our challenges. We all had our struggles. So I want to hear about the biggest struggle that you had. Tell me about that situation, where you were, what was going on in your life, in your sales career at this point, where you knew. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I really appreciate you asking me this question. And I'm going to take it back a long time ago, and I'll connect the stories. My very first struggle was my mum was an absolute gun of a sales professional. So when people ask me, who was your biggest influence in sales? When I really think about it, it's my mum, and a migrant that came to Australia, limited English skills, and she, learnt the language and started working for, Mary Kay, global cosmetics empire. And before too long, she had her own team. Before too long, she was winning awards, and she was in like the number 3 in our country. And I think if I recall, maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I watched my mum going from absolute peak to the absolute, point of crash. She completely burnt out, right? Burnt out to a point she went to hospital and suffered a really major breakdown. That was it for her. And so what do I bring that story up? Because I say at the time, being a 7-year-old young man, you not truly aware of what exactly happening. All I saw was my mum was working hard, and she was hustling, and, she had goals, right? Mm-hmm. So then I fast forward, maybe 22 years later, 23 years later. And it's December 2011. And I had the best pipeline you could think about. Deal after deal, robust, a whole quarter of deals. And one by one, each call I made, each email I opened, deal just kept falling through. Not right time. Boss said no, haven't got the money, maybe next year. Every excuse you could hear about. I'm like, that's okay. I've got another one. That's okay. I always had pride in the fact that I had such a robust pipeline.
How long had you been in sales at this point? Was this like your first few years? Were you a seasoned vet at this point?
Well, look, when you think, if I go back, I go, well, when did my career start? I mean, we hustled at school. I worked in call centers, the old, like the boiler room type call centers, 19, 18. We're not talking about dialers here, man. We're talking about the old touchpads.
You have a sheet of paper, no computer.
No computer. I say this story, people don't believe me. Like,
they don't understand.
No. I'm like, you guys have got you got click to dial, you got, auto dial. I'm like, mate, we had our lists from a box, and you knew they had been called because they already crossed off. And we're like, no, it's new data, mate. And so when I think about it, but when I was enterprise selling, it was probably 4 or 5 years, and I had reached some really good results. I'd been promoted, but this was the real first time where I found myself in a real challenging position. It was actually more than challenging. I had one of those managers, really drove me hard. And so come to that, I'll never forget, 17th of December, or 16th or 17th of December, and I didn't hit target. It was the first time in I don't know how many years. And I was in his office, and he sat me down, and he looked at me, and he said, what he was saying and his facial expressions were two different things. Right. So Christmas party, it's the end of breakup Christmas party with work, and I couldn't focus. I couldn't enjoy the festivities. And Christmas in an Italian household is a big thing, family come together, food, eating. It's a huge thing. And I just bought a new house, and I was a little bit probably stretched from a financial perspective. And so I went into that Christmas break 2 weeks thinking, man, what am I going to do? I was really questioning life. Kids are there, and we're doing stuff, and I just couldn't focus for the 2 weeks. I couldn't focus at all. And so I'm thinking, geez, I've got no education. Maybe I'll jump on a job board. I'll have a look for a job. And yeah, I did look for a job. I did my resume up and I thought, this is it. Maybe I have to get out of sales. Maybe sales isn't for me. And however, after looking at jobs and thinking, I haven't really got any option, I made the decision that when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, right? And
Yes.
it's when I made an actual decision to say, you know what? If all those deals fell over, I need to double, triple my activity because I've got to catch up from the last quarter. And between you, me, and all your listeners, I'm not going to promote this on my LinkedIn profile. I didn't see eye to eye with my manager. And he was that, whip, that whip leader from behind, never led from the front. He always managed from the back. So I kind of thought, you know what, the best way to work through this is through my actions. And the only way that I could achieve the actions was through my mindset. So I had to get my mindset. So I got it's not an old CD. I got a CD of Paul J. Meyer. Mm-hmm. And not sure if you know Paul J. Meyer, the gentleman that passed away in 2011, founder of SMI, real legend of the game. And it was a 50-minute sort of combination of different talks that he did. And I literally listened to that every day in the car. Like, and some of the sayings, like a dying duck in a hailstorm, just some of the sayings that he'd say, and it was insane. I can still recite it to this day, some of the things that he spoke about.
Yeah.
And it was that spaced repetition. It was that believe in myself. It was that get out there. And before too long, my pipeline started absolutely cracking. And if we fast forward sort of 6 months, I closed the biggest deal in the company's history.
What?
And it won me an award. I won the global sales leader across 60 countries for that particular organization. I was recognized for that the following year. And I literally rewrote the record books for the organization. And that was a kind of the start of my real, talked about that's, the start of my journey where I really started to see that, the only thing stopping me from achieving what I want to achieve is myself, is my mindset. So sorry, that's a long answer, Donald, but that's, where the rubber really hit the road.
What was it about this? Like when you were looking at the job board and you're thinking about this, what was it that just really made you say, I have to keep going with this? This was my only option. I know you kind of mentioned, but what was going on in your mind at that point? Was it like, I'm going to have to, start, I came so far in sales, I'm going to have to start over from zero with all these other places? Or is it just, I'm not going to get a job in time? What made you feel like this was your only option? You had to go back to sales.
I think the realization was that no matter where I went, I was going with my mind, right? I couldn't separate the two. And for me, it wasn't I always had strong work ethic. So work ethic was, a foundation of success for migrants, for especially from an Italian family. So my father's statement was first in, last out. And yes, people will argue that, that's not a working smarter mentality. But my work ethic, I could never question my work ethic, but my mindset. So, the decision that I made that if I went for another job, what's stopping me from getting to this same point? And if I don't try to work through it, I'm going to have the same problem at some point. And we see this all the time in sales. We have, salespeople that can jump jobs every 12 to 18 months. And they're what we call, they're fantastic at the interview process. Mm-hmm. And the minute they hit a bit of a snag or a bit of a bump, what do? They go to the next role. There's no shortage of sales jobs, right?
Never.
So I didn't want to be that person. Actually, it's not even that person. I needed to prove to myself that I was better than just going, well, it's getting hard, I'm going to leave. Because what would I have learned through that process?
Nothing.
Absolutely. So I needed to make a decision that, I was going to give it a go. And I was willing to risk, it because I had nothing. I said, not that I had nothing to lose, but, if I had fallen over and it didn't work, well, I would have, worked through it then. So that's when I made the decision to sort of, to say, no, I'm better than this and I'm going to develop the right mindset to take me through to the next point.
Seeing you made that decision and your career, you closed the biggest deal. What was going through your mind that day when you closed the biggest deal? Did you think about that day when you almost when you almost left this industry?
Well, I'll tell you. So when I won that deal, it was an intense 4 months of my life. Like I can say I slept at the office and I'm sure my old executive assistant will remember, but I slept at the office. She would have to bring me dinner some nights. It became more obsessive, Donald, right?
Yeah.
But that day I was meant to, so the executive director of one of the, a global company, and he'll listen to this, he'll know who I'm talking, I just won't mention the name, but I was waiting for his call. He promised me that he'd call me back after his executive meeting with the decision. It was about 5 p.m. Mm-hmm. And so I did that whole, I can't ring him first, can I? No, I'll wait. At 6 o'clock, I rang him up. No answer, went straight to voicemail. Mate, I was so distraught. I turned my phone off. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. I went home, went straight to bed, and I got up the next morning and there was a voicemail saying, sorry, mate, we went out for drinks after work, after our executive meeting. All good. Systems go. Let's get ready to start. And so when I look back and I go, wow, that day, still that imposter syndrome kicked in,
Yeah.
So, that when I go back and I think to myself, even that day, I suppose the imposter syndrome kicked in where I was questioning myself again. And even though I did everything right from a sales perspective, I managed that deal from ticked all the right boxes. But the thing that I've learned, Donald, in this industry and what we do, doesn't matter how well we execute the sales process, how well we help the buyer through the buying process, we can never control the buyer's decision. We can only control our mindset and the way we approach the situation. And that's the biggest learning I took from having, a really dark moment in my sales career.
Dude, this is amazing. I know there's somebody listening to this right now and, he's going through the same exact thing. Or maybe she had that same imposter syndrome where she's feeling, I closed the deal, but was it luck? Did I just get lucky on that one? And I think this just hit home to them, man. Well, dude, this was awesome. Fantastic. If that one person who's listening right now and they need to hear that, you just mentioned this, is there any other last words you would give to them as they're sitting back, or maybe they're driving home and they're thinking, sales is too tough. I need to go get something more steady and I can't do this and I want to give up on it. What would you tell them right now?
Absolutely. And all I can say to them is break it down. Image, pipeline, sales. Image, how are you showing up? How are you getting up? How are you preparing yourself? What is your mindset, to achieve success? Get that right and then focus on your pipeline. Do the activity. Get the hard work done. You can't cut corners in what we do. And if you get the image and the pipeline right, the magic will happen. But too many of us focus on the scoreboard without focusing on getting our mindset right, knowing the activity that we have to perform every single day. So if you are challenged, if you are not achieving target and you're really struggling, just go back. Go back to the foundation of, success is how am I showing up? How am I preparing myself? And am I actually putting in the required input? Am I doing the hard work? Because if I'm not, then I can run away from sales and do a different job, but I'm still going to have the same problem. So that's the biggest piece of advice I can give anyone that hits that bit of a roadblock. Just go back and focus on your mindset first.
Dude, awesome, man. Well, if folks out there want to get in touch with you, Luigi, you have a podcast as well. How can they go about connecting with you and also checking out your podcast?
Awesome, man. So I'm on LinkedIn. You type in Luigi. I'm the first one that comes up. I'm pretty proud of that. And also the Sales IQ podcast. So, I haven't got 1,000 episodes, more than 1,000 episodes, but we talk about some of the same stuff and I interview some great leaders. And mate, because, I hold you in such high regard, man, and what you've done for our community globally is insane. And you were one of the people that inspired me to do a podcast, man. So I want to say thank you for having me on your show and inspiring me and thousands of other people to be the best we can be.
Oh man, dude. Well, anytime. And I'm learning myself from you and from everyone. And I highly recommend folks, if you have a podcast app, you're listening to this, you need to just stop right now and then go and search and go find the Sales IQ as well. You're not going to be missing out. So I return it to you, man. Thank you. Thank you so much for your example. And I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, brother.
Man, wasn't his story fascinating? If you've been there before, say yes. I know we've all been there. We all came to that point where we felt like quitting. And in his situation, I don't know how he continued, but as he shared, he did it and he made it happen. I want you to take something from the conversation I had with Luigi today and apply it to your sales game and improve and to go out, just push through those challenging moments and just make it happen. I have a link back to his website as well as to his podcast, and I recommend you go ahead and download it. Check it out. Fall in love with it. Fall in love with him and some of the great things that he's doing. Also, while you're on the show notes, check out our TSE Certified Sales Training Program. It would be an absolute honor to have you join us. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, again, just swipe up on the cover art, see all of the show notes below. I share stuff like this. I bring folks like Luigi because I want to help you. I want you to be able to find more of your ideal customers. I want you to have more meaningful conversations and build stronger value. I want you to close more deals, but most importantly, I want to challenge you to go out each and every single day and do big things. Hey, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. And also, if you haven't done so already, I ask you to go ahead and hit subscribe. It would be an absolute honor to have you leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. It goes a long way. Folks are able to come back behind you, see your testimonial, and hit subscribe because of what you share. I would greatly appreciate that. Our show today was produced by myself and the Sales Podcast Network. It was edited and mixed together by the one and only Jershon Obale. Our show note today was created by Rael Ramirez. Our podcast guest coordinator is Mrs. Maymar. All of our podcast artwork and social media graphics was created today by Desin Cunado. Our podcast production manager is Mrs. Shannon Rasmussen. You can find audio credits to this and all of our episodes in each of our show notes. And as always, I am your host, your coach, your mentor, your guide down the sales journey, Mr. Donald C. Kelly, the sales evangelist. Sales Podcast Network.